very respectful to say, listen, the Hadith knows how to figure out who a Jew is. It's a camel milk, sheep milk test. And then I apply that to other animals. And then why is that disrespectful with the method that the Hadith uses?
I'll throw you again. Maybe we can encourage some debate.
It is a little disrespectful, I mean.
Okay, well,
He's on, that is the guy talking on the right foot.
The right toe is the trolling, but
I found an Islamic apologist website that addresses this hadith, and it counts it as a hadith where it's basically just Muhammad. They claim it's just essentially Muhammad speculating off the cuff, but that's not supposed to be the sort of thing that's taken with sort of divine sanction.
If anyone's actually interested, this was a tradition that was borrowed from the Talmud, I believe. Let me try and get the source.
So Muhammad, he's just, he's spitballing, he's speculating, you're asking like, which animals are Jews? And he's like, yeah, well, I heard the rats are Jews. And, it seems like, I would have thought the divinely guided person would have had the sense to know that, A, probably not that these Jews were turning to rats, but secondly, that this is not a very good test. I think the more damning thing is that it's not a very good test to figure out whether the rats are Jews. So even if Muhammad is just speculating, his theories about how to figure out who the Jew rats are is not the most effective test. Like, I would think they would have, okay, let's do a couple double control study, double blind control study.
Yeah, so there were protests in Northern Ireland.
Instead of just
Some
looking
weird
at the
town
milk,
name, I can't remember
another
what it's called.
kosher foods, you know what I mean? If they like the filter fish, that's some evidence. If they like, if they dislike
Hey, Sam, I have a question. Sam, how do
Chinese
you
food,
know?
if they like Chinese food on Christmas, that's pretty good
I mean,
evidence.
I have a serious question. How do you know that the test was about kosher food? Does it say that that's the relevant difference between camel milk and sheep milk?
Say it's a test.
Well,
No, I know. I'm asking like,
sheep milk is kosher.
Is that what's being searched?
Well, I am doing a little bit of exegesis right now. Because I looked into it, and sheep milk is kosher, and camel milk is halal, is not kosher. What other reason could they be? What other information could they be gleaning from the fact that they like the sheep milk, not the camel milk, other than the fact
Well, I
that?
don't know. I think the answer of one is kosher, one's not makes the hadith make sense. I don't know that it's the only required answer to make the hadith make sense.
Here's a serious answer from, I think Sam will like the source, ChatGPT. Says the hadith you're referring to appears in Sahih al-Bukhari. Muslim scholars have offered different perspectives on this hadith over the centuries. Number one, literal interpretation, the minority view. Some literalists might have taken the hadith at face value, that the group of Israelites will literally transform into rats due to divine punishment, etc. Number two, metaphorical or allegorical interpretation, the majority's view. Most classical and contemporary scholars interpret the hadith non-literally, viewing it as a simile or a metaphor to explain theological and moral points that sinful groups of people can be debased or humiliated, not turned into animals physically. That seems like a reasonable thing. It names some scholars, Ibn Hajar, Al-Asqalani, his commentary on Sahih al-Bukhari, Al-Nawawi and his commentary, etc.
So, like, Sam, what I want to know is when I hear that.
You're talking in my mind, but I'm afraid it is offensive.
Hold on, Sam. What I want to know when I hear the hadith is, at the time of the writing of the hadith, what is the cultural significance between sheep milk and camel milk? No, but for Muslims, what's the difference?
No, but it's only relevant to whether they're Jews or not. But I do want to.
Do you understand what I'm asking? In other words,
yes, I get it, but I don't know. But I don't think that's what's relevant. I think what's relevant is how it's significant to Jews and the answer is that exposure. But I do want to say that if it is a metaphor, then why is it giving you the test?
Shut up.
If you're just saying, hey, some people went against God and now God curses them. Okay, metaphor, cool. But if you're saying, and then the way to find this out is to give them different kosher and non-kosher milks and see which ones they drink, it no longer seems like a metaphor.
But he's not giving it as a test. It's just a story that says, oh, look, there are some rats like this that drink pickle like this, that they're transformed Jews. And I mean, I don't see the problem with giving details. It's like, yeah, there's fables that give details about like, oh, this animal did this and said this and then this happened. But we all know it's a fable. It's like,
What if I said in English, you are lost, you son of a bitch? What if I said that? Are you really a son of a bitch? Are you literally a son of a bitch?
No,
It's a way to curse.
It's a swear word.
It's a way, yeah.
No, but if you said, Sam, you know Sam is a son of a bitch, and the way you know is that he barks when the mailman comes, I would then go, that sounds like less of a fucking metaphor.
No, that is exactly that. They're just building on that cursing, basically.
Right. And it says, and Sam, he wags his tail when he's happy, and he, like, howls at the
Sam, it's just like Aesop's fables.
like
In the-
can't you imagine a person who wants to like insult you and tell you you're an SOB doing all of that, like just piling it on? Yeah, you're
So,
you're
like-
wagging your tail when the mailman comes, and it's like
Another way of looking at it, like, and the way that some historians have like explained it is like, in the Babylonian Talmud and some apocryphal texts, there was like a Jewish tradition where like certain, I think it was the Babylonians themselves were transmuted into monkeys and demons and other sort of like creatures. So the speculation is that Muhammad was borrowing from that tradition when
Sam
he
versus the Muslims show.
That may be true, I'm not sure, but that doesn't seem like much of an apologetic defense.
No, not an apologetic, just a historical explanation.
I mean, sure.
Very good.
You want to give the source in the Talmud?
Yeah, I'll fetch it.
Something that's really bizarre is that I've heard Muslims say that Jews' ancestors are apes and pigs, when in fact what it says in like Hadith traditions, and I think it might even say it in the Quran, is that there was a subset of Jews who were then transformed into pigs or apes, which is not the claim that us, like me and Mark and Mills, are descended from apes and pigs. So I don't know. It's a little bit weird that that idea has. It's not even doesn't have any biblical reality to it.
Also, I think Mark's gonna say something.
Never mind.
Oh, come on, Mark.
Let's just read it again. I'm going to see if I can get a better understanding of it. The prophet, peace be upon him, said, a group of Israelites were lost. There's a bunch of lost Jews. Nobody knows what they did, but I don't see them except that they were cursed and that they were changed into rats. For if you put the milk of a sheep camel in front of a rat, it won't drink it. But the milk of a sheep, it will drink it. I told this to Cobb, who asked me, did you hear this from prophet? And I said, yes. And Cobb asked me the question sometimes. I said to Cobb, do I read the Torah? I tell you this is from the prophet. Okay. Well, I don't know. It just seems like a little bit strange. Let's move on to another hadith. I think we've sheep milked this one, for all it's worth. Now it says that. Oh no, she left. Unfortunately. Oh no, don't leave.
Rick knows a lot about this. Maybe he can help us understand.
I have a joke in my mind floating, but I will not say it because I think it's.
That's fine. What do you think about this hadith? This Bukhari 3305.
I will not answer you. I will not answer you. I don't think that you are a sincere person.
Even if we're insincere liars, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have an opinion on Sahih Hadith. You said you're now a literal, what's the word that you used? Like the not Sufis, the Salafi. You're a Salafi now, so you should believe the Sahih Hadiths.
No, a Salafi means someone who understand the understanding of the predecessors. I will not call myself a Salafi, but I will call myself have knowledge on the Salafi stuff, right? So if you have knowledge on Egyptology, they will not say that you believe in Egyptian, like ancient Egyptian theology, but you are knowledgeable about that theology.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm knowledgeable about the Salafi point of view, but I will not call myself Salafi. So I prefer to be called Sufi or a student of Sufism. It is like someone who is not Christian, but they say that he specializes in biblical knowledge. Like Jordan Peterson, for example, I think he's an atheist, right? But in a way that he specializes in biblical knowledge. The same thing with the Salafi thing. I'm knowledgeable about the Salafi knowledge, but I don't call myself a Salafi.
We understand.
Did you have an opinion on why it says in Sahih Muslim that you should wipe your butt with an odd number of stones? Do you have do you think it has some sort of theological, symbolic meaning or something? Because intuitively to me, you should just wipe your ass with the amount of stones that are necessary to clean your asshole, rather than count it up like we do in, like, you know, just doing that thing.
I don't know. I think back then they didn't have like toilet papers, right?
But why an odd number, not an even number?
Like, people using toilet papers is the same thing, right?
I'm not objecting to the rocks.
Why people use toilet papers instead of water?
It's the odd numberedness, which is the strangeness to me. Listen, I've wiped my butt with strange things before. I've wiped my butt with T-shirts. I've wiped my butt with leaves. It's not the object. It's the odd numbered. Because I just think you should wipe your butt until your butt's clean, rather than say, oh, like I gotta
clean it with water and soap.
Yeah, you seem to be stuck. Okay, think of this as a math question. Like, why is only an odd number? Like, why not a Fibonacci number of times? Or like, why not? What's another famous, like, why not wipe it like exactly pi amount of times? Or
Why not know odd and even?
Here's ChatGPT to help.
It's not called
It's
ChatGPT.
the same part of Prophet's preference for odd numbers in many acts of worship and hygiene, such as the witr prayer, ablution steps, etc. So it just seems that Muhammad had a preference for odd numbers, and you should do things in general with odd numbers. All four methods agree that purity is the primary goal of any practice, that water is preferred, but when lacking dry cleaning is allowable, and when using such stones, it is recommended, though not obligatory, to use odd numbers in all those steps. Just a preference of the Prophet.
So he's like an OCD guy who's counting everything, like counting his steps, counting his prayers, counting his butt wipes. Like, it's interesting.
I mean, he just could have like thought that, you know, like March says, you know, potatoes, they're just neat, you know, like maybe Muhammad was like, you know, odd numbers, they're just cool.
When I was raised up as a Muslim, the odd numbers were preferred because it reminded that, you know, God is one and it's an odd number, I think.
So when I'm wiping my ass, I've done 6 wipes, and then I go, okay, I'm gonna do a 7th wipe because God is one.
That's right.
There's something about There's something about numbers like there is something about the number 7 in Christianity, or 6. Like 6 is demonic, and 7 is like 7 is like 7 heavens and stuff. Like 7 is holy and 6 is like demonic. I think the same thing happens in Islam. There's like certain numbers that considered to be good.
During like the wudu, the washing with water before praying, you can use one stone when you don't have water, or if you have water, you rinse each body part 3 times. It's very specific about the 3 times.
I mean, people in general have these kinds of preferences, like in weird places. Like, if you look up any sort of workout program, like a totally random example, it's like always sets of like 5 reps, 3 reps, 8 to 12. It's like, what's wrong with 7 or 9? And it's like, those numbers are just avoided by people. They like seem to have some sort of preference. Like, it's not really cool to have those numbers.
Yeah. Judaism, I think the Khamsa, there is something called Khamsa or 5, the sign of people have. It is good luck to have like 5 Khamsa or something. The hands of Fatima also.
I think this obsession or superstition with numbers is like a long tradition that came from Judaism, but it's less clear, just imitated in Islam. When you go into Judaism, you have this numerology thing, but it's more precise and sophisticated. You have traces of it in Islam. And the fact that they count like how many times which word is quoted in the Quran, like it's still used in an argument sometimes. So I would say just superstitious numerology, and that's all.
I have a job that is floating in my mind, but I wish that you don't consider to be disrespectful, guys.
Say that.
Actually, you don't repeat that.
Yeah, you can
I want to say it. I want to say it.
Shut the fuck up. God.
Yeah, I wanted to research. Veritasium did a research. I think he told like 200,000 people to pick a random number from 1 to 100, and his test was to see whether 73 is the most random number, and it was one of the most prominent. Like he discounted 1 and 100 from the results. He was like, okay, we're not going to count 69 because people are doing that as a joke. And so like the most kind of quote unquote random or preferred numbers were the 10s, like 50, 60, etc. But then after them, like 37 and 73 for some reason. Like it seems we just as humans have some weird subconscious preferences for some numbers.
So I have another question about this is not about the hadith, it's about Muhammad's character. So there's a woman named Sauda, who's one of
Real quick about that number thing.
Sauda bint Zamma, and she was a wife of Muhammad, and she was a little bit fat, a little bit old, and she was kind of scared that Muhammad would divorce her. So instead of saying to her like, what's it called? Like she was like really insecure. She's like, hey, please don't divorce me. You can sleep with Aisha instead of me on my day that you're supposed to visit me. And Muhammad goes, oh, okay, sure. So instead of Muhammad being like, of course I'm not going to divorce you. You're my wife. I love you. I'm not going to divorce you because you're like a little bit bigger and that you're getting older. Like that's disgusting. I love you. You're my wife. He was like, oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I'll totally, bang Aisha instead of you and stop visiting you at night because, Aisha's hotter. Like, I don't know. I just think it's like a little bit odd. A couple things about this odd. One is that Muhammad didn't comfort her in her insecurities, but rather went along with just banging Aisha instead. But also that she plausibly thought that he would do that. So he thought that Muhammad's character was such that he might just divorce her just because she's fat and ugly and older. Like, so that means Muhammad's the kind of guy that would do that.
You're protecting your
Didn't Rahab, like the story tell us that he did the same thing with Sarah and he...
It's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, like she is old, she cannot have babies, and then he went to Hagar.
What does that have to do with anything?
But you're missing up the story. She says to him, I'm old and I can't have any more children. Take my handmaiden. He doesn't say it to her. She says it to him.
Yeah, but it's the same, like...
Sauda, yeah.
She not sleeping because she's like old and... Like she knew that he have the right to have like children, right?
What does that have to do with anything? I don't get it. We're talking about the character of Muhammad.
For a little bit of context, you have to know that Muhammad was married to Sauda after Khadija's death, and it was it was told to that it was like after a very big pandemic, and he was kind of broke. And then when he married Aisha, who is like the daughter of Abu Bakr, who was rich and famous and respected, his situation improved. He had an alliance, so probably he married Aisha for that reason too, for such an alliance and to be understood and respected. Because once Khadija died, she was wearing the pants. She was the older, rich woman, so she was carrying the power. And when she died, nothing was left. He was a preacher on his own. And Sauda, I think, Sam, you're projecting your idea of, marriage, romantic things, because at that time, there's no marriage in Islam. There's nikah, and nikah is a contract, basically. So the woman is completely dependent on the man, and once she is old, unable to give her, successors, babies, she is vulnerable. Like, she could be thrown away, and this is like she cannot sign the contract. So she tried to compromise her situation by saying, I'm old, and you can have, I can keep my place as a spouse, and not be dependent on not be divorced and very vulnerable. and I gave my night to Aisha. That's all. That was a very, very, that was a negotiation, basically.
Okay, so I'm going to read some stuff about this. Ibn Kathir wrote, an example of such a piece can be found in the story of Sauda bin Sama, who, when she became aged, the prophet wanted to divorce her, but she made peace with him by offering the night he used to spend with her to Aisha so that he would keep her. The prophet accepted such terms and kept her. So Ibn Kathir thinks that he was going to divorce her because she was old. What the fuck? Who divorces a girl just because she's old? You love your wife. You don't divorce them because, you're no longer a pretty young girl. I'm gonna divorce you. Back in a day when you're in a very sexist society where you can't, if you're alone and unmarried, you have a lot of danger and trouble, and that instead of saying, "Hey, I married you. You've given me the best years of your life. I'm gonna be by your side because I love you because you're my wife." Instead of saying that, he goes, "I'm gonna divorce you because you're ugly, and I would rather fuck Aisha, who's much younger than you." It's a little bit it's kind of messed up. The prophet's like this.
The reasoning
It's not a marriage.
a lot of people wants to marry because they want to have children, right? If you have more children, you will be more powerful, and that will help you. And that kind of situation that he wanted to have a younger means that he wants to have healthy children. It doesn't only mean that when you marry, you only want to love and have sex. It's also that you want to have children. I mentioned the story of Abraham and his Sarah. Like, she recognized that he had the right to have a son, right? And it is something good for a man to have a son.
There's other ancient laws also. There's other ancient laws that say that things like this, non-childbearing, for example, are grounds for divorce for some of the same reasons that Phoenix said. Like there's other law codes that are like that. That doesn't make it less misogynistic, right? But it's like it is an explanation about it, and it might not be about Muhammad's character per se, but it is about him living in a particular legal social construct.
Exactly.
Then a lot of people to war. They will go to war and they will die, and the majority of the citizens in the city or the locals the majority are going to be women. Like maybe some villages will have maybe 5 men and 30 women in some villages. So they have to marry, they have to have sons in order to survive. So the children will go to the wars, right? And the women are like, back then they believe that the woman cannot go to wars. So if a village has all 5 men and 30 women, then how can the rules of marriage be in that situation? Actually, it's going to be more similar to what happened during the time of Prophet Muhammad.
So I asked him ethical concerns that might be relevant to this story, and he said, well, marriage is often seen as a covenant based on mutual trust and love and support. not based on physical attractiveness. Abandoning a spouse for aging is a betrayal of those vows. Also, reducing a person's worth to their physical attractiveness, especially as they age naturally, is often viewed as objectifying them rather than valuing them as an individual. Also, lack of reciprocity. In many societies, wives play a significant role in maintaining the home and raising children, often sacrificing their personal and professional aspirations. To then be discarded when their physical prime fades can be seen as a profound lack of reciprocity and gratitude. Also, the vulnerability of the older spouse. Older individuals, particularly women who might have been limited in economic opportunities, can be left vulnerable in financial and social positions if abandoned by a spouse in their later years.
Exactly.
But like all of these things are just suggestive that Muhammad is like basically being really, really, really callous towards this old woman who loved Muhammad. She loved him so much that she was like, you don't even have to visit me at night. You can visit Aisha instead. Please just don't divorce me. And then instead of Muhammad being like, babe, I love you. And you might not be as pretty as you once were. Neither am I. But I like spending time with you. You're my wife and I love you. He said, you know what? Nah. I want to fuck young pussy instead. Which is a little bit kind of sketchy. I gotta
It's
say.
also ironic because Aisha never gave him children. Right? Aisha couldn't give him children. No. Listen, the Muhammad of this particular hadith is painted in such a way that he doesn't look merciful. He is not rahmatul lil alamin like the Quran calls him. Something is off, and people need to do some amount of critical study on hadith. This is not the only source of like narratives that people have received. Do some academic work. Muhammad in the academia looks way better than the Muhammad presented here. Wake up.
I agree. That society is expecting him to behave like this. It's not like the text.
Academia also doesn't care about the hadith as much. But also,
Yeah, I think-
for part of the issue with the situation too is that you're not allowed to marry Muhammad's wife. So if he would have divorced her, she still had emotional needs, even though they're not physical or sexual, other men wouldn't be able to take on that role because nobody is able and allowed to marry Muhammad's wives. So Muhammad creates even more of an issue by allowing these women to be widows and remain widows to the end of their life.
Actually,
And lastly, the answer to the odd numbers is in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, where it says, indeed Allah is witr or odd in one, and He loves al-witr. So Allah loves odd numbers, so that's probably why.
yeah, actually, I know some people who separated from their loved ones just because their loved ones wanted to have children, right? So, love is not like loving, but you also have personal needs and personal stuff that you might go into, and you might decide to separate from your loved ones based on just this kind of preference of not having children, right? So there are these things, like marriage is not only about love. Marriage is about also forming a family. It's also about having children. It's also about being a father and being a mother. It's not only about the relationship between the husband and wife.
She was already old. It's not like she was like, oh, you're infertile and you're 21, so I'm gonna divorce you. She had already like married her for many years and was with her. It's not like, oh, I only want to be with a woman that can give me kids. It's like, you're just too old now, so I don't want to be with you anymore. You're not attracted to me anymore, so I'm gonna abandon you.
With your girlfriend because she said she wanted to have children.
Yeah, it's true that I did not marry a woman because she wanted kids and I didn't. And that is, I mean, I still think that maybe that was a mistake. But
But that woman would also be able to marry somebody else, like this woman. So I don't know why Phonics is like trying to hope for Muhammad, but there's still an issue being a widow.
If you love her, you would accept that having the children with her, right?
But if you didn't want children, what the fuck,
So some people leave their spouses or their partners because their partners want to have children, right? Like love is not going to interfere here, right? Or should it interfere and stop the separation?
How is that a comparison to
Muhammad wanting to divorce a woman who would never be able to get married again, and she didn't want to be divorced, and leave, and then him wanting to leave her in such a situation. That's not the same comparison. You're just going.
It's that there is this denial that the Prophet loved her when he divorced her, right? But that is not necessary, right? If the Prophet divorced her, doesn't mean he don't love her. And some said what? Some said, if he, of course, like he will not divorce her. He will go to her and say, I love you, like I will not leave you because you are old. No, but the Prophet said, no, is because you are old, I'm going to divorce you. The same thing when divorce his wife or separate from his partner because they want to have children, they will not come to them and say, no, I love you, I will stay with you, even if you want children. No, he will say, no, I will leave you because I don't want to have children.
So whatever happens, so like Muslims usually give this defense. Muslims are allowed to lie to their wife. And so what they'll say is, oh, well, if your wife doesn't really look pretty, you lie to her and say you look pretty, and, it's just a white lie. So how come Muhammad didn't practice what he preached?
But it's worse than this, guys. It wasn't like, oh, I can't have kids with you, so I'm divorcing you. It's like, hey, I don't want to be bothered to come visit you like once a week or whatever. I would rather visit a hotter girl than you. So if you let me visit a hotter girl than you, I won't divorce you. But if you make me come visit you once a week, I will then divorce you. Like, it's such a gross way to think about relationships. It's such a gross way to think about relationships. Okay, so, one second. Okay. The claim that Sauda bint Zama feared Muhammad might divorce her due to her age and unattractiveness, subsequently gave up her conjugal right to Aisha, remains likely supported by various Islamic sources. Here are the exact quotes from traditional Islamic texts as cited by Muhammad. You got Ibn Kathir talking about it, who's a renowned Sunni scholar, and he said the thing I said about the Prophet wanted to divorce her, but he made peace with him by offering to give the wife to Aisha. Abu Dawud al-Hayalisi said Sauda feared that Muhammad might divorce her and said, oh, Messenger of Allah, do not divorce me. Give my day to Aisha. And he did. So, in two Sahihs, Bukhari Muslim, reported that Aisha said, when Sauda bin Zama became old, she forfeited day to Aisha. The Prophet used to spend Sauda's night with Aisha, and making peace is better. Like, Muhammad's idea of making peace isn't, hey babe, I don't need to get pussy every night. Sometimes I just hang out with my wife because she's lonely and I love her and she's my second wife after Khadija, and I want to just make her feel appreciated. Instead of being like, oh yeah, of course I'm gonna spend time with you. I love you. You're my wife. It's, you're old. I would rather have sex with young women. Either I'm gonna divorce you or you forfeit your night. And then he spends time with the young girl, and then it's like, oh yeah, like that's a good thing to do. Making peace is better. Like, how is this not obviously a morally compromised man? If I had 10 wives, they wouldn't think for a second that when one of them gets old, that I would divorce them. It wouldn't even cross their mind. They'd be like, yeah, me and Sam had lots of hot sex when we were young, but now we're older, and that's not what our relationship is about anymore. And now we do other things together. Because that's what a healthy relationship looks like. Not one where you go, you're old, so I'm going to divorce you. Like, Jesus Christ. What? Do you guys does no one have any idea what fucking love is?
Yeah, this is out of character for a prophet who is like mercy on mankind. So the question is like, what are these ahadiths? Are there ahadiths in other sources, in other denominations in Islam? What do the academics have to say about the character of this prophet? I mean, these are questions I think literalist Muslims should question, or traditionalists in particular denominations must question and ask, because this is really not sounding right. The Muhammad edition, the Muhammad does not look like this Muhammad. does not look like this Muhammad. So something went wrong. Look into history, do critical historical analysis, and be bold while doing it. Knowledge is all out there. People like Sam are just necessary for this process, so that you analyze, you dissect.
Yeah, because
Sometimes I think that when interacting with non-Muslims, that the problem is not ignorance or they are not informed. The problem usually is arrogance. Even if you inform them, you repeat, you explain your position, no, they will have their own kind of idea that they just want to otherwise.
How's this guy coping? Is this guy like actually some undercover or something? Are you doing this coping and making excuses? You're just.
Why have you interrupted that?
Because you're giving that hominem, you're coping, you're not actually making an argument. Won't you make an argument?
But yeah, you can't, even if he's doing all those things, you can't interrupt, so don't do that.
I guess I didn't interrupt, it was finished.
Okay, well, anyway, this story just paints a picture of Muhammad being not even understanding what love is. Like, fundamentally misunderstanding what the nature of love is. When you love someone, you have fun with them when they're young and energetic. And as you get older, your relationship grows. You become friends. You like spending time with each other. And then, as your relationship deepens, you find activities together. You're not gonna keep boning like rabbits. But you still love each other. You want to spend time together. The idea, it's unbelievable. Okay, I've been polyamorous. I've had 4 girlfriends at once. The idea that I would stop wanting to hang out with my, first wife because I had another girlfriend who I'd rather bang instead is just so gross to me. The reason why I married her is because I love her and want to spend time with her. That's why I married her. And the fact that I get to bang other women, I want to spend time with the wife that I married and I love. It seems that Muhammad is just doesn't even know what love is. He doesn't understand the idea that when you love someone, you just want to spend time with them and take care of them. You don't say, you're old and ugly, I'm going to divorce you. That's so gross.
Sam, why do you think marriage in antiquity was about love? Yeah, I was gonna say,
It's supposed to be a book for all times, Caleb.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I assume there's still marriage contracts.
Yeah, but he's also called mercy on mankind. Someone merciful, someone who's so loving, and he is known for that characteristic. In the same books, he's also expressed as the most loving. It seems absurd, right? So, Hadith is not set in stone. There are a bunch of narrators who gave narrations. This could vary based on who the ruler of the time was. They came 200 years after the life of the Prophet, this particular Hadith book. There are other books, there are other sources. If you want to do a critical study on the personality of Muhammad, like this one, which the mainstream traditional Muslims take, they need to answer such questions, I think. No matter how much you hope, this doesn't reflect mercy, this doesn't reflect loving,
Sam, are you familiar with the process of critical inquiry into a text? Are you familiar with that process?
Super familiar. Super duper familiar.
Okay, well, so the basics of this sort of critical inquiry into any text is...
He said he was familiar, you don't need to know the basics.
Okay, well then I don't understand what his statement is, okay, Muhammad was not a loving person, because he's comparing today's standards of love with standards of love from thousands of years ago, and then you have to take into consideration the way that you filter a text, and you have to take into consideration who it was written for, and then all of these religious texts, they all have contradictory points, or points that seem to contradict one another. It's not as easy, just by saying, okay, Muhammad didn't love anybody or something like that. It speaks more to your particular narrow point of view rather than what's actually written down. Or it's a hell of a lot more complicated than what you're making out, Sam.
Alright, a couple of comments. Caleb, you asked me, why do you think people got married for love in the past? I don't really think that people got married for love in the past, but I think that Muhammad is supposed to be a beacon of mankind. And although it is true that we sometimes have marriages of convenience, that is not the ideal standard. And that you should love your wives, and even if the marriage isn't even if the marriage is like a one that was arranged, or whatever, you should still try to love your partner. That is the better thing to do. So you're morally better if you love your wife. Now, when it comes to like the text and like, oh, having a critical blah blah blah, all you're saying is, can I come up with excuses for why when I read the text,
It's not
it doesn't say what obviously it says? Yes.
No.
Yes.
He's right.
What I'm saying
is.
You're coming up with mumbo jumbo for why when it says Muhammad is doing something horrible, that it isn't something horrible. And you go, oh, do you know who the text was written for? And did you know that these texts have contradictory stuff in it? Did you know that, like, dude, the story as written and as understood by scholars paints a very damning picture of the man.
Well, which parts are you talking about now?
I'm talking about Sauda was scared that Muhammad would marry her because she was getting old. It was his second wife. And she was like, oh, you're getting old. And she was scared that he was going to divorce her. And then Muhammad, she's like, you can spend your night that you usually spend with me with Aisha instead. If you please don't divorce me. And
Sam versus the Muslims, part 3 of the
I
movie.
love you. Of course I'm going to spend time with you. He's like, oh, okay, yeah. I'll spend your night with Aisha instead. Because she's hotter.
Wait, wasn't that like a good thing, though?
Yeah, it was good. One very
The point that I'm making, what? That's like
it's a very different thing. It's you can't take today's values and place it.
Yeah, you can.
No, well, you can't. You can't. Right.
Look, I'm a moral realist, so
Okay.
yes, you can.
So no, there's nothing realist about what you're doing.
Oh, I think that we should have the same standard. I think you should be moral in general, and have the same standard applied to everyone in all
But Sam,
context.
here's the thing though, Sam, right? Look. Just fast forward 100 years from now. People are gonna look back at the shit that we're doing now, and they're gonna think that we're barbaric.
And they right, fucking nuts, of course, like what?
That's a
Well, hold on.
It's not
Sam,
nonsense. It's fact.
sorry, one moment. Do you not notice that they?
things.
No. One moment. They do this with actually Western. Okay, let's leave the East for a second, right? Like with Western, right now they're trying to rename certain streets because this person was a slaver,
Exactly.
this person was an abolitionist. They're doing this right now. They're starting to tarnish Churchill, who was considered a hero, a war hero in World War II. They're starting to say he's racist.
Gallipoli was
Yeah.
Exactly.
Churchill's an
So-
absolute monster.
No, hold on. They're doing this to people who are alive. Like, there's people who, like right now, Donald Trump is seen as evil right now while he's alive. right?
Churchill was a genocidal racist, by the way.
Okay, hold on. What about Gandhi? What about Gandhi?
Historically important figure.
Gandhi was a good and bad.
Gandhi was like a pedophile predator.
Oh my
who,
goodness.
was like an Indian
Because
rapist.
you know,
Nelson Mandela.
doesn't mean they're not facts about these people. It's just
Nelson
means they're
Mandela
ignorant
was a
of
fucking terrorist. Nelson Mandela should
So
look
that's
for
the thing. You can villainize people so easily within like 50 years.
More criminals.
Yeah, you just brought up the worst people. Like, yeah, what about come on, what about Hitler?
Andre, you wanna address this? Andre, I made the point, like, you're objective and you're seeing it from the outside,
I
right?
think Netanyahu is a
Tell
very
them
good
that the
example.
hold on. Tell them the
Netanyahu think he's a good criminal, exactly, and to some people he's a hero. Exactly.
Yeah. Do you guys not notice that Nargis was in the middle of talking? Do you guys not notice that fact?
Sam,
don't you
so
see
funny.
that Nargis finished? Come on, guys. Let Nargis
I was just gonna tell Andre so
Sorry.
I'm objective.
There's too many people in this room. If you interrupt, I will move you down. Just let you know.
Yeah, it's not a fish market, you freaking uncouth villager.
I'm allowed to interrupt this,
Andre.
right?
Go ahead. Andre, go.
Yes, plus, you see, if you talk to Shias and their version of Muhammad, it's going to be a completely different person, and none of this shit, none of these embarrassing hadith, and it's a completely different kettle of fish. But if you take the so-called Sahih hadith of the Sunnis at face value, it's going to be, you can read the Sharah, but it's still going to be really, really difficult. And I see a lot of Sunnis.
So is there a historical figure that said love everybody no matter what, even if you disagree with them? Right? These look. My point is, Sam. There's so many rooms in Clubhouse where it's like let's demonize these people room, and then you go to the next one, let's demonize this other people room, and there's rooms let's demonize the Jews room, and then there's another one let's demonize the Muslims room, and it's just so lowbrow. I was hoping, Sam, that you're more intelligent than that.
Sam,
are you trying to say it's immoral to do?
Hold on, Sam. Muhammad is as equally bad in the Shia.
I'm saying at the end of the conversation, nothing is resolved.
Fuck up, you're drunk, You're drunk all the time. You do not speak facts. Some of us have done studies, and listen, Venus, this needs to stop, okay? Don't give me that shit. Please do some academic study. It's like you're an atheist. Why does it matter to you?
Sam, can you give me 1 second, Sam? Can I quote Kafi and you give me like pre-reading to prove like what Andrew just said is like absolutely bullshit?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah. So to begin with, which hadith do you think is in the Sunni corpus that's not in the Shia corpus that makes Muhammad look like Andrew?
No dialect. No dialect.
Anyone?
Just read the thing that you think is bad from the Shia hadith.
Oh, in the Shia hadith, Muhammad was married Aisha when she was 9. This is in Kitab al-Kafi. Muhammad beat Aisha. This is in Kitab al-Kafi. What else? It's even worse because in the Shia hadith, Muhammad is like an even bigger criminal than in the Sunni corpus, because in the Shia literature, Muhammad married Aisha, when she was 9, but he married her own daughter, Fatima, when she was 9 to Ali, who was like 20. At least in the Sunni literature, she was like 18. In the Shia corpus, if you read like Kitab al-Kafi, Madlayat al-Faqih, Al-Istirsar, Al-Ahkam, and obviously Bihar al-Nawar, who was like all the resume of all the scandals. Fatima was 9 when Muhammad married her and went to Ali.
I was 6 when the Prophet was 55. Shame on you.
Here's the thing. In Shia hadith, not only was Muhammad 54 when he married a 9-year-old, because the hadith of Aisha being 9 is in Kitab al-Kafi, but Muhammad married his own daughter when she was 9 to a 20-year-old in the Shia corpus. So the Shia hadith,
55 and 6-year-old. A prophet in 55 and a child.
that hadith is in Kitab al-Kafi, you understand that, right?
What you don't understand is that the Shia Hadith are not classified the way that the Sunnis are. There is no Sahih.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, sir. You think I'm so ignorant that I don't know about Ilm al-Rijal and how in the Shia literature how they do gradings of a hadith is completely different from the Sunni. The problem is, my good sir, is that like al-Majlisi, who was a muhaqqiq of a hadith, authenticated both the hadith that Aisha was 9, and he also authenticated the hadith that like Fatima was 9, and Muhammad married her away. So it's not the case that like I'm completely ignorant. These are hadiths are sahih by like the Shia standards of like Ilm al-Rijal, my good sir.
There is no Ilm al-Rijal in Shia. That's where you freaking get jacked.
And I'm gonna get more beautiful, Andrew. Did you know that like in the
It's no
Shia
Ilm
hadith,
al-Rijal. That's not the system used. It's the Usuli method.
in the Usuli methodology of Ilm al-Rijal, my good sir, the only difference between the Sunni method and the Shia method is that like in the Shia method, in the Shia 12 method, the Imam has to have approved of the narrator. But the thing is like, there's like a million hadiths where Jafar al-Sadiq, Muhammad al-Baqir, al-Qadim and so on approves of like a bunch of like narrators. So we don't have that problem. That's like a distinction without a difference because we have all the hadiths where he approves of all narrators. Now going back to the problem, not only do we have the big scandal, my good sir, in the Shia hadiths that are sahih, that Muhammad marries a 9-year-old, he marries his daughter when she's 9, but in the Shia corpus as well, which al-Majlisi authenticated by the way, and al-Khoui as well, we have a hadith that says something like the following: the Kurds are all jinns, do not marry or judge anybody from the Kurds, do not speak to the Kurds. So in the Shia literature, we don't only have pedophilia, we have racism as well, my good sir. And they are sahih by the most succinct and detailed standards of Ilm al-Rijal and Tahqiq al-Hadith, which was applied by al-Khoui. Now I'm done, my good sir. How do you reply to that, my good sir?
You're not brought forth any hadith. Even as an atheist, a Nasibi will always be.
Just to be clear, I love Imam Ali and I hate Muawiyah. So I don't know how I'm like a Nasibi. Najis, you want to apologize?
As Imam Ali once pointedly said, if you cannot say something good about somebody, say nothing.
What did Imam Ali say this, by the way? Can you give me the citation?
I think that's a Western.
One second. Andre just said...
I have jihad. I don't need to give you any sources, good sir.
One second.